So let's sing together 97, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home, a long way from home.
Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where we join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or as we like to say in short, to create community, find meaning, and live justly. I want to begin, as always, by welcoming all that you bring with you to this space, all of your unique beliefs and background and lifestyle and experiences and differences. All that helps make you who you are is welcome here today. This includes those of you who are in the room with us, whether you are regular attendees or even joining us for the first time today. We're glad to have you. Welcome all of you, and welcome to those who are live streaming with us this morning or perhaps this afternoon. Wherever you're at this morning, we're glad to have all of you too. I have one announcement I want to make this morning, and that is to remind you, or to let you know if you don't know already, that next Sunday following this service, probably around 12:30, our shared ministry team will be leading a congregational conversation about the possibility of disassociating from the Unitarian Universalist Association. This is not a congregational meeting in the sense that any decisions will be made. There won't be any voting or any motions, anything like that. It's really going to be based on the desire to get more feedback from each other, to listen to each other, to understand where we might be coming from on this issue, as well as to answer some of the questions that came up in the recent survey that went out the best we can as well. So just kind of information gathering for everyone involved. So we hope you'll plan on attending next Sunday around 12:30 after our second service. And that is the only announcement I have this morning, so why don't we take a few extra seconds to greet one another. Now that you're all quiet and sitting comfortably, get up and talk to each other. Okay. Now that you're all jazzed up, sit back down. Actually, I think this is a really special service today. The piano music is going to really keep us hopping, I think, even if we are sitting. It's just magnificent. So you're in for a real treat today. Thank you, Jackie. But for now, we are going to move forward by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The theme of our service today is why our liberal values of freedom, human dignity, reason, and tolerance are enough to satisfy our religious needs. In light of this, I'd like to share a poem about Frederick Douglass, escaped slave, abolitionist, suffragist, journalist, statesman, and orator, who with courage and conviction embodied these values and enjoins us to follow those principles in our lives. So this is a poem by Robert Hayden, Frederick Douglass. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth, when it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action, when it is finally one, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo-jumbo of politicians, this man, this Douglass, this former slave, this Negro beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien. This man, superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statues' rhetoric, not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dream of the beautiful, needful thing.
Okay, if you could turn to 89, which is Come My Way, My Truth, My Life. Come my way, my truth, my life, such a way as give us breath, such a truth as in so length, such a strength as healeth death. Come my light, my feast, my strength, such a light as shone a feast, such a feast as men's in length, such a strength as makes a quest. Come my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can move, such a love as none can part, such a heart as joys in love.
We're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning. And we begin with a candle on behalf of our dear longtime church member, Lila Gervin, who is near death at this time. And we want to think of her and her entire family. It wasn't too long ago that her husband, George, passed away, so her family is really experiencing the blows of two losses very close to each other, that people that are very important in their lives, especially for her sons and grandchildren and whatnot. I did get to visit Lila very briefly this week, and although obviously she won't be with us much longer, it was wonderful to see her come to life when I sat down and her face brightened in her eyes and her smile, and reached out her hand and, "Oh, Todd, how are you?" And it's like I was just the most important thing going on at that moment, just the way George did when I got to see him. They're just such wonderful loving people who always made you feel welcome in their home. And it was wonderful to see that she still has her wonderful grace and personality with her. We also kindle a candle, as we have been, on behalf of the people of Ukraine and Russia and that region of the world suffering from the war and violence there, as well as the people of Israel and Palestinian people in that region of the world that are suffering from tremendous unnecessary war and violence there. We do have a candle of congratulations today on behalf of church member Dick Steele. He was here at the first service, so if you bump into him, be sure and congratulate him. He officially retired as of December 31st. So welcome back to the land of the living, Dick. Actually, he retired from Lingraphica, which is a company that he founded with two other people in Silicon Valley more than 30 years ago. And it uses computer technologies to help people who've had strokes to regain their speech. So that company is still going strong and is now located in Princeton, New Jersey. But be sure and thank Dick Steele not only for his for entering into retirement, but for the good work he's done in our world while he was working. And let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Children are welcome to come forward for our Time for All Ages, but I have to admit that this morning's story is more for the adults. We want to tell the adults, kids you can listen to, a story about a garden. It's a magical, ever-growing garden. When the pandemic hit, the garden went quiet for a little time. No new plants were being added, and it felt like the soil needed to rest. But then one day, a tiny sprout popped up, then another, and another. The garden began to bloom again, brighter and more beautiful than ever before. But here's the thing about gardens. They need care. They need gardeners to water the plants and make sure every little sprout has room to grow. Here at UUCS, we have a garden of our own, and I'm not talking about the one that's on the side of the building. I'm talking about our religious education program. And let me tell you, it is flourishing. Last Sunday, over 20 bright and curious kids showed up, many in their pajamas for our pajama party. And our wonderful volunteers like Dick, Judy, Candace, Lynn, and Karen are already helping me tend to this garden. But the garden has grown bigger than any one gardener, or even 6 gardeners, can manage. Last week, Sunny Cook, is Sunny still here? There she is. She saw that I needed a little bit of help, and she jumped in to lend a hand. So thank you to Sunny, and thank you to Tom, who is here somewhere as well, for stepping in to help Sunny cover her ushering duties while she helped me. But I can't rely on this kind of spontaneous help every week to help the garden thrive. And so here's where you come in. We need more gardeners, volunteers who can help nurture this growing garden. If you've ever thought, I'd love to get to know the kids in our church a little bit better, or I'd really like to make a difference, now is your chance. You don't need any special skills or experience. I do all of the planning. All you need to do is show up. And on the Sundays that you choose to volunteer, your role will be simple. Build relationships with our amazing kids, help me manage snack time, which can get a little bit messy, and escort kids to the restroom, which is located outside of the locked lobby doors. We're also thinking about creating a new group just for our kids who are 11 and up. So if you have a passion for middle schoolers, this is the perfect opportunity to connect with them in a meaningful way. So if you feel a tug at your heart this morning, if you think you might want to help our magical garden grow, please talk to me after the service or email me on the address that's at the back of your program here. If you can't volunteer your time, we of course take monetary donations, and we love donations of snacks. Because if you ask the kids, they'd probably tell you their favorite part is the snacks. And the meaningful community, of course. Together, we can make sure that every little sprout in our community has the chance to bloom. Thank you so much for considering volunteering, and now join me in singing the children out to Children's Chapel.
As we move into our time for meditation, I invite you to find a comfortable, receptive posture. Close your eyes if you wish, and take some deeper breaths as I lead you into the silence with these words by Herbert Hoover. Freedom is the open window through which pours the sunlight of the human spirit and of human dignity.
What'd I tell you? I tell you, we are just so fortunate to have a pianist composer who's so talented here with us on Sunday mornings. Jackie, thank you for being here. And as I said at first service, we need to help get Jackie Sandberg's name into our community. I mean, this is first-class music that we're hearing. So you can tell them that, yeah, right. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So, all right, enough said for now, but we definitely want the community to know that there's such a special musician in our midst. So my college philosophy professor, whom many here have heard me speak of from time to time, Dr. Wallace Roark, who was also a Southern Baptist minister, frequently said, believing in God is nonsense. And what he meant is that there is nothing tangible to validate one's belief in God. Although a believer in God himself, Dr. Roark liked to speak in paradoxes and did not mean, as the term nonsense is often used, to imply that he thought believing in God is silly. He literally meant that there is no material proof to substantiate such a belief, and that those who claim to be believers ought to understand and become comfortable with this fact. Believing in God is believing in something there is no evidence for. I believe that the same can be said of the word spiritual and its derivatives, like spiritually and spirituality. Spirituality is nonsense. And there are dozens of different definitions of this word, which makes its meaning vague to begin with, even though it is often spoken as if everyone understands it in the same way. I want something more spiritual. She's a very spiritual person. It was a spiritual experience. Or as I often hear said of me, his sermons are not very spiritual. And I don't wish to offend, but in the spirit of honesty, I usually take this word to mean nonsense, in the way that Dr. Roark did, and that's what I hear when it's being used, unless its users define what precisely they mean by it. Theologian Matthew Fox, for example, coined the term creation spirituality, which refers specifically to being inspired by and devoted to the natural world, which is not nonsense, but the very source of sense itself. Nature is sensational. But without such a qualification, most of the time that it's used, as its synonyms suggest, to mean something like non-material, incorporeal, disembodied, intangible, improvable, spirit, ghost, and so forth. As such, I am in complete agreement with those who criticize me or my sermons for not being very spiritual. I strive to fashion and present sermons based on sense, not nonsense, and that are based on empirical evidence, reason, and research, not on untruths or unprovable ideas that induce positive feelings that fool some into thinking they've had a profound experience. Sometimes I hear, "Your sermon was so good, it moved me to tears." I'm sorry. Occasionally, actually, my sermons move me to tears, too. But crying is human, not spiritual. In fact, humans are the only known species to shed tears. Be they tears of joy or grief, crying is the biological signature of an entirely ordinary human experience, as are the various physiological expressions of other emotions, all our emotions, like frowning or smiling or being wide-eyed, or the changes in our heart rate and respiration. What some consider a spiritual experience is really but an emotional shift, which is human and physical, ordinary, not extraordinary. Granted, the point of a church service is to create a safe space where our thoughts and our feelings can shift. But as a Unitarian minister who respects the autonomy and dignity of others, it is never my intention to manipulate your feelings or your beliefs. Our church services, my sermons, including our songs and our music, the readings that we have, and other rituals, are about opening our minds and hearts to new possibilities and new ways of seeing things, not directing your thoughts and feelings in specific ways. And all of these elements are based on sense, not nonsense. So it's more accurate to say that a particular sermon or song or service or music was moving. It moved me. It animated me, brought me to life. Emotions are physical experiences that can be traced to our biology and our neurology. They are not spiritual, meaning they are not non-corporeal or nonsensical events. If by spiritual some mean that they want to go to church and feel something, then they should say so, and more importantly, be aware that this is really what they are seeking: a neurochemical reaction, a dopamine rush, not a disembodied spiritual occurrence that transcends or defies what is wrongly and sadly dismissed as ordinary, mundane, physical, embodied reality. To my mind, the entire 13.7 billion year history of our universe has achieved its greatest accomplishment thus far in the evolution of life, of sensation, of consciousness. And there is nothing more real, more profound, awesome, or more inspiring than this. Why do we want to leave it? The whole universe has been working to get here for billions of years. The 20th century Jesuit priest and scientist Teilhard de Chardin famously said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience, we are spiritual beings having a human experience." But what's wrong with just being human beings having a human experience? From what little we know of our universe, how extraordinarily rare an opportunity it is to be human during our brief lives, the only creatures to shed tears, and to have achieved such extraordinary levels of consciousness that not only speaks, but rhymes and sings and writes, that not only walks and runs, but dances and runs marathons, that not only adapts, but creates art and builds rockets and thinking machines, that not only laughs, but makes jokes and celebrates and makes merry, that not only dreams while sleeping, but dreams while wide awake about better ways of being, a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and all women and all persons are created equal. We dream dreams that move us to act in the world, in this world. So I do not wish to trade my ordinary human experiences for nonsense, but to fully inhabit this world while I can during my all too short life, and to grasp it and love it and ground myself in its reality, including in its hardships and its challenges and its suffering. While here, I wish to develop my fullest capacity to be human, not to transcend it. Transcendence will come after my death, even if I'm only transformed back into the earth. And it will come all too soon as far as I'm concerned, for I do not wish to be a spirit. I wish to be a man. The root of spirit, spire, means breath. That's it, breath. Just living is spiritual. That's what Rabbi Heschel understood when he said, just to be is a blessing, just to live is holy. Breathing is our sacred ritual. Breathing, and thus the embodiment in this world, living and breathing, is the most spiritual thing that any of us can do. In her classic work on mysticism, Evelyn Underhill wrote that the mystic surrenders to the embrace of reality. And this is why one of our own mystics here at the UU Church of Spokane, the great late Reverend Dr. Bill Half, wrote that it is a misconception that real mystics are soft-headed and fuzzy-minded. As a scientist turned mystic, a chemist turned Unitarian minister, he understood that it is reality, not spirituality, physics, not fantasy, being, breathing, and living that gives our lives meaning and purpose and agency to make a difference through our lives in this world. Spire is also the root of words like spear and inspire. To be inspired is to be animated and alive, not only with breath, but with those insights and truths that move us and motivate us. To be inspired is to be speared, is to be penetrated by values and principles and beliefs that guide our actions and our goals in the world. In this sense, spirituality isn't something we experience temporarily when our emotions are occasionally stirred into a frenzy during a church service or some other ritual. Our spirituality, rather, is something within us that remains there, sometimes for years, as long as we hold to those principles. Sometimes we evolve and allow others to penetrate us. But they stay with us for a long time, sometimes for our entire lives, for the purpose of guiding and directing our actions in the world, not beyond it. Some spirits are demons, though not literally. Don't worry, there's no such thing. But demons like greed and the lust for power or selfishness that move us to live and act in destructive and thoughtless and heartless ways. Those possessed by these kinds of spirits are undeveloped, stunted individuals who have not achieved their full capacity as human beings to truly love themselves and others. Some of the most powerful people in the world, one of whom is having a special day just this week, are the most unevolved because they have been guided by an immature desire to connect with others by controlling them, rather than developing their capacity to truly love them. As social psychologist Erich Fromm once said, "Love is a power which produces love. Impotence is the inability to produce love." He goes on to explain, "It is hardly necessary to stress the fact that the ability to love as an act of giving depends on the character development of the person. It presupposes the attainment of a predominantly productive orientation. In this orientation, the person has overcome dependency, narcissistic omnipotence, the wish to exploit others or to hoard, or has acquired faith in his own human powers, courage to rely on his powers in the attainment of his goals. To the degree that these qualities are lacking, he is afraid of giving himself. He is afraid, hence, of loving." On the other hand, Fromm says, care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge are mutually interdependent. They are the syndrome of attitudes which are to be found in the mature person. That is, in the person who develops one's own powers productively, who only wants to have that which one has worked for, who has given up narcissistic dreams of omniscience and omnipotence, who has acquired humility based on the inner strength which only genuine productive activity and love can give. From these definitions, we understand that Fromm is not speaking of love as it is often spoken of as some pie-in-the-sky sentiment that has no practical meaning. It is not a feeling. It is not a feeling at all, but a way of living And it is the only way of our being fully human. To care and to be responsible and to respect and understand others. To me, it is devotion to this cause, to becoming fully human and clearing the way for others to do so through our care for, responsibility for, respect for, and knowledge of, that is at the heart of our Unitarian religion. It was the devotion to establishing a society based on such love, idealistic as it may have been, that ultimately led to the American Revolution in 1776, prompted by a historic Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we're about. That's what everything in our society is supposed to be about. Opening the path for us and others to be there. And in pursuing our own happiness, not to get in the way or prevent others from getting there. As imperfect and vulnerable now as our union is, as it's turned out to be, the spirit of 76 that motivated the American revolutionaries to fight for a more equal, free, and democratic society is the same spirit, the same spear, the same breath that fills our liberal religion today, or at least it ought to, and it's supposed to. And I fear the values that once defined, bonded, and anchored Western society itself are being forgotten, and even worse, consciously discarded. Discarded even by many claiming to be Unitarians. So it is my chosen purpose as a Unitarian minister to do my best to remind us of that which once moved and motivated our religion. The same centuries-old spirit that motivated the American revolutionaries to declare their independence, to fight for it, and then work for its establishment. And not merely for the sake of Unitarianism, but for the sake of human civilization, which cannot achieve its fullest potential without a devotion to the principles our liberal religion and our society are supposed to be founded upon. Yet I was asked just last week how I can describe Unitarianism as a religion when I'm an atheist, and our church has no doctrines or dogmas. Firstly, I agree with philosopher Bertrand Russell's broad definition of religion. Russell said, a complete philosopher, and I would say a complete person, will have a conception of the ends to which life should be devoted, and will in this sense be religious. In short, no matter what church they go to, everyone is devoted to something, and that source of devotion is one's religion. The fact that I'm devoted to the Enlightenment principles that once defined Unitarianism, human dignity, reason, freedom, and tolerance, doesn't make me any less religious than someone who claims to be devoted to God, or to the Catholic Church, or to Islam, or Hinduism, or Buddhism, or any other mainstream religion. It is the devotion that makes us religious, not the particular ideas. Secondly, the notion that religion is defined by theology, by one's belief about God, stems from Christianity's rather narrow notion of ideological salvation, that one is a good Christian, that is, if they believe Jesus is Lord and have professed this in a profession of faith. But as theologian Karen Armstrong reminds us, today's major religious traditions, all of them, Confucianism, Taoism, Hinduism, and Buddhism, which emerged around the same time 3,000 years ago, and what she calls their latter-day flowerings, Rabbinic Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all originally emerged in response to the injustice in the world and concern for the oppressed. What mattered in the beginning, Armstrong says, was not what you believed, but how you behaved. Regardless of its roots in an eventual emancipation from Christianity, Unitarianism has always been about how we behave, not what we believe. And this is why it was our religion, that passed the first religious toleration law in history, the Edict of Torda, in 1568. Guaranteeing preachers shall not be molested, nor anyone persecuted on account of religion. No one is permitted to remove from office or to imprison anyone because of his teaching. This edict, passed by the Unitarian King of Transylvania, John Sigismund Zapolya, was inspired by an earlier decree crafted by his wonderful mother, Queen Isabella, in 1557, when he was only 17 years old, stating that each person maintain whatever religious faith he wishes, 1557, with old or new rituals, while we at the same time leave it to their judgment to do as they please in matters of faith. Just so long, however, as they bring no harm to bear on anyone at all. That's our religion. That's our roots. All the way back to 1557, even way back then, when Unitarianism was decidedly a Christian religion, it was still about how we behave, not what we believe. It was about respecting one another, the freedom of belief, the right to reason for ourselves, and tolerance towards those with whom we disagree. Not only is this enough to base a religion on, it is what our religion has been based on for more than 450 years. Yet today, tragically, as far as I'm concerned, there are many Unitarians, especially Unitarian Universalists, who find these values uninspiring, who say they just aren't spiritual enough. The Unitarian Universalist Association, which has been the main hub of our religion since it was established not too long ago in 1961, has completely abandoned our liberal principles. And more importantly, our liberal behavior. Last summer, it adopted instead 6 euphemisms centered around an ill-defined word, love, none of which are dignity, or freedom, or reason, or tolerance, or independence, or individualism, or democracy. How do you feel when you hear those words? Right? You feel something stir in you? Dignity, freedom, reason, tolerance, independence, individualism, democracy. Those values that define what it means to be liberal. Gone from the UUA. They've even stopped calling themselves a liberal religion. Now they are a covenantal religion. In retrospect, none of us should be surprised by these changes. Since 1961, due to the association's failure to adequately merge 2 different religions into one, Unitarianism with Universalism, UUA members have increasingly felt it necessary to put descriptors in front of Unitarian Universalism. I'm a Buddhist UU, they say, or a Christian UU, or a pagan UU, or a humanist UU, and so on. But this was not the case earlier on, according to a survey of 12,000 members in 800 of our congregations conducted by the UUA in 1967, only 6 years after the merger took place. In that survey, less than 3% claimed to believe in a supernatural being, less than 3% of us. 28% considered God an irrelevant concept. 57% did not consider ours a Christian religion anymore, and 52% preferred a distinctive humanistic religion. Almost 40 years later, in 2005, the UUA's Commission on Appraisal conducted another survey asking members what they think holds Unitarian Universalism together. I mean, imagine even getting to the point where you have to ask that question. What are we about? Any ideas? We'd like to know. And the responses were all over the place. No consensus. After more than 4 decades, we stopped knowing what we're about. The Commission's report concluded with, despite consensus within the Church that the liberal message of Unitarian Universalism is important in our troubled world, we find it difficult to articulate that message clearly. We know our religion is great, we just don't know why. We know we've got a wonderful message that's necessary, we just don't know what it is. They can't articulate the message clearly because they no longer have a clear message, which has left our liberal religion susceptible to those attracted to its openness, understandably so, but who want to come in and help define it for us or redefine it for us. And in fact, they have. It's too late for the UUA. It's no longer a liberal religion, and it no longer represents our liberal values. But it's not too late for Unitarianism. In fact, we now have an opportunity to reclaim the values and principles that once defined us: human dignity, reason, freedom, tolerance, independence, individualism, autonomy, democracy. These are the values that my life is devoted to. And I am, in this sense, religious. Deeply religious, as far as I'm concerned. Yet I am still just a human being having a human experience, which gives my life purpose and meaning. I guess that makes me a no-nonsense kind of guy. And that's good enough for me. How about you? Thank you.
All right. If you can turn to 118, This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let
With the dawn of the new year, may we commit to being voices for freedom, for tolerance, for reason in our lives and in the wider community. In short, to let us shine. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.
You too. Oh yeah.